all good enterprise sellers have been creating mutual action plans in spreadsheets, and they're really good at creating tailored business case decks and things like that. Now all sellers get templates that standardizes for them of here's the business case template in the room, here's the mutual action plan template with much better UI and capabilities to actually make mutual action plans work. So everyone really become good collaborators in this space. So Gartner says that 5% of the buying journey is spent with you as a single vendor. They also share that 43% of buyers prefer to self-serve and not speak with the seller. So they've gotten used to the self-service tools, the self-service journeys, and a lot of them don't take your word for it. We can just go and sell to everyone. You have to build committed champions. Most of the sales happens actually when you're not there. So really, when you realize that your role is to help that champion go and do most of the selling when you're not there, then beyond that environment, that's how you should look at the sales process.
Welcome to the How to Sell podcast. I'm your host, Luigi Prestinenzi. And as always, I'm pumped, honored, and excited that you have joined us for what will be a very engaging conversation today, because today we're talking a bit about how do you get consensus? How do you bring the buying committee onto the journey so that you can get consensus and you can help move them down that buying funnel to a point of decision? Because as we know, a lot of enterprise deals, even not enterprise, even those smaller to mid-market opportunities now, there are more buyers getting involved in the decision-making process. And some of the data shows us that 40 to 60% of those deals, the decision that they end up is no decision. They can't get consensus. So I'm really excited to talk to our guest today who, and I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll allow him to introduce himself, but why this is a sort of the start of our series, because all of our series episodes that we've got coming up around how to sell to the way that our buyers buy. And over the coming weeks and months, we've got interviews with different buyers, with CFOs, heads of enablement, chief marketing officers, and we're going to be asking them, how do they get to that point of decision? And so this is a real great way for us to get started, to get you thinking about how to shift the way that you sell. So before I bore the hell out of our guest who's sitting there in the green room, just want to say welcome all the way from Israel, Gal, to the How to Sell podcast.
Thanks so much, Luigi. Really excited to be here. Hi, everyone. Yeah, really fun topic, my best favorite topic. So looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, awesome. And I just want to say, ever since I heard you on the Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist podcast, mate, I fell in love. I loved what you were talking about. I loved the concepts that you shared, the digital sales room, gaining consensus, the challenges when it comes to getting people across the line, the change journey. So I'm really pumped to bring this content to life. But before we get started, would love for you to share with our audience, how did you start in this world of selling?
Yeah, absolutely. So, today I'm a co-founder and CEO of a company in the sales tech space. Basically, really, so stayed in the passion. I actually started, found my passion early on and started in sales 20 years ago, and have kind of got into tech real quick. So last 15, 16 years in tech SaaS B2B sales. And just found the passion just selling telco at a telco company, B2B, and founding my way up from there. And I think it was in the early days, I kind of pre-SaaS was a thing. I actually researched SaaS and decided, okay, that's interesting. That's where I want to build a career. And yeah, long story short, last 15, 16 years I've been doing the AE, enterprise AE roles, building 3 sales organizations from scratch as a head of sales, VP sales, CRO, helped companies such as Sisense, Sight, and Anagog scale from 1 to 10 and did the 20 to 100 million in ARR path. And continued in sales tech as CEO and founder.
Yeah, well, that's huge. That's huge. With some of the numbers that you talk about, there's only a small amount of, a small percentage of companies are able to grow to that level of ARR. So that's pretty impressive. And And you went from sort of running the sales divisions to founding your own company. What
Yeah.
inspired you to start your own SaaS platform?
So like for me, it's always been about challenging myself, find new things, working my way into new challenges. Loved leading, loved building, and always had passion for that. And
Yeah.
I knew that at some point I'm going to build something. I'm going to run a company. Gonna when scaling, growing into the CRO role, you see that you're more about the strategy, more about building, more about leadership. And so I knew it's going to come, but basically not that fast.
Yeah.
So really the path to aligned, yeah. So the path just was an opportunity. So my former co-founder, my former colleague and current co-founder, Gal Ditch, also named Gal, we worked together at, two gals, a lot of gals, uh, which, in the US is, it's like, yeah, has a different meaning. Uh, so we worked together at a company called Site, uh, and he basically wanted to build something. And
Mm,
over there, we were always asking ourselves, like, how do the top 1%, like the best sellers, do it every time? And there's such a big gap between some sellers and others.
yeah.
And kind of we were constantly thinking about this and discussing this, and what we realized at some point that really what the top sellers do that others don't, they just don't sell, right? In the
Yep.
old way of in the old meaning of selling, they don't go and push, and they don't just go and throw information at you, and they're just really damn good at curating a buying experience, a buying journey.
Mm,
They're working with champions, they're building consensus, they're making sure they're reducing friction all the time. They're really project manager for the champion, for the buying group, and
mm,
that's what they were doing very differently. And this is where the idea came from. We wanted to really go and build something there. I initially was an advisor at the company while I was CRO. So Gal with Yotam, my other co-founder, really started building the company, and then they say, okay, you have to come in and join in full time, and the
yeah.
rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So, and I can see. So obviously you were in the seat, you're in the sales seat. You were constructing deals, and I love what you've shared, right? Because you've shared the top sellers aren't necessarily selling, they're guiding, they're facilitating, they're helping bring consensus, etc. And again, I would love to really touch on this. And now that you've been able to sit in the seat as a founder and you're seeing this platform and you're seeing multiple people use your platform, would love, could you share with us again, if the things that you said that you see great salespeople do,
Hmm.
how is that from the buyer's side of things? So with your platform, you're able to bring different stakeholders from the buying committee into a digital world, right? Or into a digital platform, which they can all
Hmm.
collaborate on a business case together, right? Could
Hmm.
you maybe share with us how bringing them into the same environment, that committee, what it does to the sales process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think even taking a step back right before, beyond bringing them to a same environment, uh, I think what does it is working with them, right? Is
Mm,
understanding that right now the world has changed, and you're no longer we can just go and sell to everyone. You have to build committed champions. Most of the sales happens actually when you're not
mm,
there.
yep,
There's a lot of stats around it. We can touch on that a bit more. And um, so really, when you realize that your role is to help that champion go and do most of the selling when you're not there, then beyond that environment, that's how you should look at the sales process. You're
mm,
really working with someone, and you need to think about what are all of their buying steps, what are the things that they're doing internally, and how everything that I'm going to provide that champion or potential champion, right? It could be
yeah,
multiple champions today. Also, in many deals, it's important to try to get few. how we're supporting these people to go and bring the deal. What do they need to do? Do they need to go and go into RevOps, go into sales enablement, right? In our world, what do these people typically need? Where are they involved? How do they go through budgeting decisions, requirement building, guiding them through how to test and evaluate how others have tested and evaluated? So really, that is the mindset, and thinking about all the time about how to support the internal processes that are taking place. I think this is what it's all about.
Okay, and that's really interesting, right? And I love this. Where you're going with this. So again, from that buyer's side, so you mentioned the champions often in there doing work without the salesperson, right? They're in there trying to sponsor, get engagement, and they're trying to get other people to help bring them on that journey. When you're looking from, because you get to see things that a lot of people don't. How many in a deal that people are using your platform? How many stakeholders are involved in that buying process?
Yeah, so we actually recently published research around this,
Yeah.
which basically we look at how many stakeholders people think that are involved in their deals. We
Yeah.
interviewed a lot of sellers, and then we analyzed more than 1,000 digital sales rooms, and we saw that on average there are 68% more than what people are aware of, more stakeholders involved
Wow.
than what people are aware of. Yeah. Essentially, big part of it is just there are a lot of people that are typically behind the scenes. You maybe hear about, you maybe not hear about. They get forwarded information, and when there's a single space where all of the materials, the buying supporting decision materials, decision supporting materials reside, then it's the only place where everyone can come in.
Yeah.
So we see on enterprise deals, we see sometimes 20 or even 30 stakeholders in a room,
Yeah.
yeah, all entering into that space. And our platform enriches this, and then you can see who these people are, enriches the data. And then on average, it's around 10, 11, 12, something like that in enterprise
Wow.
deals, and a
Yeah.
bit less on SMB. And I think today, even SMBs, what we're seeing is that SMBs, like a lot of sales leaders tell us, we have a
It's
pretty
okay.
transactional process, and 2 or 3 people are involved. But then the reality, SMB deals have 6, sometimes 8 people
Yeah.
involved, or even more. Yep.
Pardon the interruption, but I have to let you know about this free resource. The Grow Forum newsletter has over 10,000 subscribers that are learning how to sell. Each and every week, we send you tips, strategies, and also some tools and tech on how to achieve the most out of your sales pipeline. If you're ready to level up, sign up for free at growforum.io/newsletter and get the first issue this week.
That's really interesting. Out of curiosity, you mentioned that you interviewed sellers to ask them how many stakeholders they thought was, were getting involved in the process. What was that number? What did they think?
So they thought on SMB deals, they thought, I think it was around 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
And the enterprise thought that 6 people
Yeah.
are
But it's
involved.
actually double.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost double. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I've got my perspective on what the risks would be, but what are the risks with a deal when the salesperson only thinks that there's 3 or 4 people when there's actually, 6 to 8 people? What risks does that create in the deal?
Essentially, of course, ideally you want to be multi-threaded, right? We
Yeah.
all, a lot of, that's a very well-known sales, not methodology, like a tactic, or
Mm.
right, to get to as many stakeholders as possible to influence. You can't really get to everyone. It doesn't happen
Yeah.
all the time, and you don't want to build too many stakeholders and give too many people power in conversations. It could also derail processes. But if you don't know who they are at the very least, okay,
Yeah.
then you're not able to understand what is important to these different people and address that, or help your champion address that.
Yeah.
So, you don't, in a perfect world, right, you you speak with everyone and you convince them and everything is all set, but
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. But so at least you need to know who they are and know that this person really cares about that integration to the CRM,
Mm.
and this person really cares about how easy it is and how much time it will take to go live. All right. So that's the risk, really, not figuring out who these people are and how that could
Mm.
affect your deals means that you're going to get surprises and your champion is
Mm.
going to fail doing the selling internally for you.
Yeah. So obviously the scope, your ability to get a very clear scope that brings everybody, aligns everybody's views, because people have different perspectives, right? People have different drivers, both emotive and logical drivers that impact the decision making process. So, um, and just for our audience who might not be familiar, can you just talk us through? I know we've spoken about aligned, and I probably should have brought that up earlier, but you talk about
Yeah,
digital sales room. What is a digital sales room for those that are not familiar with it?
yeah, absolutely. Um, so a digital sales room, if you think about it, essentially it's a space, new space for the deal where you work with your champion, with the buyers, um, one place to go and bring all of the content, conversations, key conversations,
Mm.
they align the next steps, mutual action plan takes there. You
Yeah.
can sign agreements, you can have internal notes, all of the sales stack comes into that single space. So a lot of people think about it, hear this, and they say, okay, why would my buyer want to enter like a platform? But basically, the good digital sales room, or the ones that
Mm.
exist right now. There was a few years ago, few companies trying to do this, but it really didn't work. And now really the world has moved post COVID.
Mm.
Everything is digital, and the technology changed. We have Miro and the workspaces like
Yeah.
Slack and Miro and Notion and Figma, a lot of these different tools available for a lot of different other tasks that we use internally. So really how digital sales rooms work today, the good ones, and we're I would say we're one of them, is you just share a simple URL, a simple link, magic link, where think about, typically in a sales process, you share a link to a Google Drive
Yeah.
presentation that you have or a case study. Then you move from that being multiple links or multiple attachments
Mm.
or a lot of different emails that are failing your champion or buying group because people are being looped in later on and they just have a
Yeah.
lot of these decision supporting materials spread across a lot of different email threads or channels. You're just moving from that single link,
Yeah.
multiple links, to a single link. Okay, and that single link is a URL that your buyer enters. At the beginning, it can be without a lot of permissions. Everyone can enter, and you can level up
Mm.
permissions of who can enter, and just everything is hosted there. And
Yeah.
that's really what it allows you to do as a seller. Just allows you to better enable and influence champions and buying teams. Allows you to access more stakeholders, identify hidden stakeholders, and really better multi-thread, and
Mm.
control the deal with mutual action plans and insights on what people are looking at. So you're at a decision point. The CFO enters into the room, and then starts going through a competitive comparison PDF that you shared 6 months ago. That's a red flag. You can now
Yeah.
make a move and make better decisions based on
Yeah.
buyer engagement in the room.
This is really interesting, and obviously, I love the concept of a digital sales room because I've historically used documents, whether it's a Google Drive link and you send them a link with a collaborative document. But and again, I think it's important for our audience, the concepts that you're talking about. Yes, in a digital world, they might be new, but the concept of collaboration in the sales process is not new. Like if you look back at Miller Hyman, Wilson Learning, these books are very old. I mean, I read it early in my 20s. They had the situational appraisal summaries. They had the blue sheets. They have tools to allow you to get on the same page with the champion and really understand, well, who is a user, who is the technical contributor, the potential anti-sponsor, and then bringing them on the same journey. So I think for me, what I love about the concept of a digital sales room is you're taking what was and what a lot of enterprise sellers practice, which was getting collaboration.
Exactly.
Because, like you said, great sellers aren't selling, they're guiding, they're nurturing, they're uncovering the hidden objectives that might exist in the buying committee and helping the champion work on a strategy that when they come up, how can they work through that? What I love about the digital sales room is you're allowing the champion to really go into the business and bring people, make it easier for them to access the business case, what the scope of work could be, what is that action plan, what is the risk profile for the project, what is the cost of inaction, whatever document you want them to review, you're giving them real time coverage, which I absolutely love. um
Yep.
Given that you've now seen thousands of digital sales rooms in motion, um can you talk us through, what are you seeing from a time to close? What impact is the digital sales room having on that time from discovery to close as a result of being able to use this digital sales room?
Yeah, so we're seeing on average a 45% reduction in sales cycles.
Yeah.
Eh, so we've seen by now, so 1,000 were the ones that we analyzed. We've basically have by now hundreds of thousands of rooms
Yeah.
uh, that are running. So there's a lot of interviews that we've done with the customers also to understand the results and what's going on in these spaces.
Yeah.
So essentially, sales cycle gets shortened as if you enter, like, what we're preaching a lot of time is that sales has gotten so complex,
Mm.
and we're just used to thinking about us. Okay, we
Yeah.
have budget scrutiny right now. We have more stakeholders to manage. We have longer sales cycles, and we're used to think about how do we tackle this? How do we, make all sellers better? But what we're failing to see is that really the key is in the buyer. They're struggling even more, and they're going through a very complex, long process internally. And
Mm.
and really, the solution is to go and to enable them to make this easier for them, to give them the tools to succeed. Because a buyer right now looking at a buying software, buying a solution, is thinking to themselves, I need to now go and speak with this vendor and that vendor and that. First, do a
Mm.
lot of offline research, then find the vendors, do a short list. Each vendor can be, think about an enterprise deal. If you're selling a few dozens of hours worth of time
Yeah.
spending in meetings and preparing decks, they're doing the same time
Mm.
3 or 4 times with 4 vendors. In addition, they have decision committees, internal
Mm.
research, internal buying meetings, internal processes. Okay, so they're thinking about all of these things, and they're in their mind, why would I speak with the seller more than the minimum that I have to?
Yeah.
Right? That's what goes on in their mind. And if that seller now can transition from a place of the average experience, and they're also thinking about that average experience,
Yeah.
someone that just demos, just sends the generic materials, just throws all the features at me, asks questions, okay, but then doesn't tie value into
Mm.
the information that I'm giving him or her. Doesn't and then just it's some is that person is a person that I go to when I need something and just provides me some generic information, and then I need to do a lot of work. They're thinking about it this way, right? Then
Mm.
no buyer will want to speak with that seller. Okay. And a lot
Yeah.
of them come with this idea in mind that this is how it's going to be. Let's see if someone convinced me otherwise. So if you bring them a space, right? And I'm
Mm.
now sorry for the long answer, but I'm trying to bring some context and share of how we're seeing this. If now there's a place where you immediately send a message that, hey, I'm here to enable you.
Yeah.
Okay, this space, and this is the message at the top of that space. This space exists really to help you right now, us collaborate better as you go through
Mm.
this decision process, loop in other people, I'm going to organize all materials throughout this process. You can ask questions, other can ask questions. Immediately that sends the message of, hey, I'm here as a partner. I'm not here to just go and pitch you. Now buyer also is able to get everything organized. So that's faster. Third point is the seller. Okay, now exactly to your last point, what all enterprise sellers have been doing really well, all good enterprise sellers have been creating mutual action plans in spreadsheets, and they're really good at creating tailored business case decks and things like that. Now all sellers get templates that the sales leader standardizes for them of, here's the business case template in the room. Here's the mutual action plan template with much better UI and capabilities to actually make mutual action plans work. So everyone really become good collaborators in this space.
Yeah.
And last but not least, the actual mutual action plan methodology is just known and proven to reduce sales cycles. So when you leverage that, then these are the results that you see.
Do you have a great product, but are struggling to reach more customers? Are you spending hours on sales activities that aren't generating results, leaving you feeling frustrated and discouraged? The Sales OS program is a step-by-step operating system that will help you slash your selling hours in half while rapidly growing your revenue. In under just 2 weeks, you can be well on your way to creating predictable revenue. In Sales OS, we'll show you how to build predictable sales pipeline, build lasting relationships with your customers, and sell more in less time. The art of negotiation and motivating and leading a successful sales team. If this sounds like something that you need in your business, visit growforum.io/sales and apply to see if you have the right mindset to achieve predictable revenue. The Sales OS program is your ticket to predictable revenue. Don't wait any longer, apply today.
And you've covered off so many important things, right? And I think because you are absolutely right. When you're going through, I think the most important part of any sales process or buying process, depending on how you look at it, right, for me is the scoping phase, because that scoping phase allows you to get real clarity over the problem statement. So what is the problem that we are trying to solve as an organization? And what is the outcome that we are seeking to achieve, right? So if we are going to go through a process of change, because often change can be quite painful, right? If we are going to go through a process of change, will the pain of change give us a reward that is more significant than the pain of same, right? And often, sometimes they look at a scenario and say, you know what, this is going to be really painful for us. We'll just put this on the back burner for now and we'll address it in 12 months, right? And that's why for me, that scoping, and I love the concept of that digital sales room, because it allows you to go, well, hang on a second, before we even think about moving to proposal, which is meeting my need as a salesperson of having to force this to a point of decision, let's actually get the right people around the table to get an understanding of their perspective, how this problem's impacting them. Doesn't even matter to them, because that's another thing. There's something that I heard from a CFO recently. Was really clear. They said, just because a problem matters for one of my team members, it doesn't necessarily mean it's important to us at the executive team, right? It might impact them and we're sorry for it, but in the scheme of all the other projects that we've got running, it's not even in the top 5, top 10 of our list of projects that we need to worry about, right? So that was a real bit of an aha moment, and something I wanted to share with you actually as well, because when I did attend this conference and there was over 1,000 CFOs there was a really great image they put up on the screen of how they looked at the cost of inaction and how they made decisions. They had the 4 quadrants. The top left was why change? Really simple. Why are we looking to change? Then next to it was what's the impact of the path forward? Then what is the cost of inaction? And what are we actually going to do, right? So they looked at the change initiative with that lens. They actually said, we're looking at our projects with a certain lens. These are the questions that we're asking, and we need to be clear on getting the answers in each quadrant, because if we can't, then it doesn't make sense for us to make that investment, because they were talking about the economy's taking a bit of a nasty turn. They're worried about the future. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stop spending, but they're just becoming
Hmm.
more diligent in the way that they look at spending their money, right? So
Yep.
again,
Yep.
I think some of the things you touched on really brings that home. For anyone listening, it's about really thinking about yourself as an enablement professional in that business, helping them get to that point of consensus before even considering putting a
Yep.
proposal on the table.
I love that. Look, it's not easy, right? It's
Mm.
challenging to get to that level of understanding. You need experience. You need to all the time try to get there. You need the methodologies, but so many sailors really think about the surface level pain, the
Mm.
challenges that are in front of them, or something that interests just one person. And the more that we go and realize how real buying decisions are made, what's important to the executive team, as you said, the better. Because really, where we're all of this budget scrutiny and all of this tightening of making moves or not making changes is just there's no other way to go and address this.
Yeah.
And where we're heading right now is really into an era, the way that we see it, where sellers just don't close deals anymore. Okay, buyers are in the front. Most
Yeah.
of the So Gartner says that 5% of the buying journey is spent with you as a single vendor.
Yeah.
Okay, they also share that 43% of buyers prefer to self-serve and not speak with a seller. They've
Yeah. I've
gotten
seen that.
used to, yeah, so they've gotten used to um, the self-service tools, the self-service journeys, and a lot of them
Mm.
don't take your word for it. And so they just, as much as they possible, they prefer to, if there's an enterprise process, to be
Yeah.
asynchronously, be behind the scenes and get some information. So it means that you really need to go and help a champion
Yeah.
control that internal narrative that
Mm.
the CFO, and you have to understand, okay, you won't speak with that CFO or executives,
Yeah.
um, and they'll have a chance to go and tell you, hey, but we're thinking about what's the cost of inaction. They won't tell you that.
Yeah.
You won't get to that point.
Nah, that's and you're right. And you know what's really interesting? And I want to add a bit of a different perspective as well to this, because I asked that, and this is the whole premise of us building this podcast of asking buyers. We've got a whole bunch of incredible people coming on that are in the buyer's seat, right?
Yeah.
And we're doing this because we're trying to get the different perspective. But I asked a whole bunch of CFOs, and I was really encouraged, Agal, by the responses. I said, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, would you take a meeting with a salesperson? And they said, we will, if they can teach us something, if they can share something that we don't know, if they can, because we don't
Yeah.
have all the answers. We might be tightening our budget, but we are still going to spend money, right?
Yep.
They said, but we don't have time, and it was really great to hear this. So, like I said, I was really encouraged.
Mm.
They said, but we just don't have time to waste with vendors who are just pitching their products. But we absolutely will meet with people that can teach us. They can share insight. They can tell us about how other people are solving certain problems that we are encountering. So even though Gartner might say, hey, yes, only a small portion of that time is spent with a vendor, this is where I think the mindset shift for sellers needs to occur, that if we are pitching product, yet we're going to be put into that really small percentage, that 5%. But when we're shifting our focus to enablement, educating, providing insight, collaborating,
Yep.
we are going to get more of the time with that buying committee. And I actually tried to validate this as well, and I did a couple of cold calls yesterday, and because I just went to this conference, I learned some great things, and I called one of the biggest universities in Australia. I spoke to their executive director last night, and I led with a very simple narrative. I went to X, I learned some great stuff. This is what they were talking about. I'm not sure if this is a challenge for you, but if it is, I could happy to share this insight. And they're like, great, let me get some of the key people around and let's organize a time. There was no
Nice.
resistance or tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't come with any, hey, this is a cold call. I'm just going to have 30 seconds of your time. It was purely an insight driven narrative, and it worked quite
Mm.
well. So, mate, I'm absolutely.
Incredible.
I've loved this conversation. We could probably talk for hours on end, but I know
Yeah.
that we're almost out of time. But just before we go, and we will make sure we put in our show notes a link, because you can sign up free to your platform to
Yep.
start building a digital sales room, and I encourage all of our listeners to take advantage of that opportunity, because using technology in your sales process is your competitive advantage, right? With everything else that we've spoken about today. But where can our listeners go to find you, Agal? What's the best place for them to engage with you?
Yes, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So yeah, just feel free to go and look for Gal Aga, GALAGA on LinkedIn. Connect with me, send me a DM. And yeah, that's basically the main place.
Awesome. Well, mate, I've really enjoyed this episode. We're gonna, and for our audience, we're gonna take this episode, we're gonna deconstruct it, and one of our other episodes, we're gonna talk a bit about how we can now flip the process and start to position some of the strategies that Agal's talked about on how do you get consensus, how do you get commitment from different stakeholders, and start to get engagement in your digital sales room. So, thank you very much, Agal, for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to having you on again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. It was fun.